This is Lysha Holmes, and I'm your host on the Recruitment podcast. And if you have been an avid listener of our show for the last 5 seasons, you might recognise my next guest, who there is a family connection. So if you're physically watching us, you might, I don't know, in the jawline possibly. I am delighted to welcome back to our community today somebody whose brain is so unbelievably creative and insightful. And who knows where we're even going to go with this conversation. But without further ado, I'd like to welcome back to our community today, Anthony Tasgal, otherwise known as Taz. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, Lisa. I blush easily, by the way.
Yeah, just to match my beautiful colour of the season, apparently, matching the
Yes.
Chesterfield.
What is it? I don't know, magenta, burgundy. I'm
A
trying
burgundy, I think that's what the old-fashioned people would say is burgundy, but I
to.
think it's probably got some new trending mulberry or name. But yeah, no, sorry to make you blush, but that's
That's all right. That's okay.
so I
Good.
know who you are. You're my second cousin.
Yes. Or is
Yeah,
it? Well, I think it's first cousin once removed.
first cousin once removed. I always get confused with these things. So I know who you are, and you have been on the channel before, but I'd like you to reintroduce yourself because now we're in season 6. Our community is growing exponentially, which is amazing across not just the UK, but across the globe as well. So give us an insight into who you are and what you do.
Oh, good. Interesting use of the word insight, which I'll come on to in a minute as well. Yeah. So my name's Taz, Anthony Tasgal, and for more years than I'm happy to admit, I've been working in advertising as an advertising agency account planner, strategist, working on brands of all hues and denominations across the globe. Peugeot, Cadbury, all sorts of people. And then, if quite a few years ago, I decided that the answer to every question wasn't a 40-second television commercial. So I went out on my own, and I now mainly do three things, which happen to create a really nice acronym. I'm a trainer, an author, and a strategist.
I love
That's,
it.
that is not one called Taz, but that's another.
I love acronyms. As someone who my business name is Key Quality Agency Integrity. It's Latin for who.
There you go.
So you
It
say
is.
maybe we're related, Taz. I love that. That's
Yeah.
a great introduction. And you have a number of books. You're an author. You're a TED.
Yeah. So I'm holding up, for what it's worth, number 7, which is just out now, which is about, again, something people need to know about me if you don't already. I studied Latin, Greek, and ancient history. And although it was several geological eras ago, I'm still obsessed with Greece and Rome and Latin and Greek and etymology and history and stuff. So I managed to persuade my publisher that I could write a book about what the Greeks and Romans can teach us about persuasion, about storytelling, about all sorts of things to do with mythology, which is everywhere at the moment. You know, you got Chaos on Netflix with Jeff Goldblum. You can see Rami Malek. We could see Rami Malek as Oedipus Rex on the stage. You got people writing books. You got Pompeii on TV. So it's timeless. It's thousands of years old, but the wisdom is still timeless. So that's my latest book, number 7. So
Sadly, when I knew you were coming on the show, I ordered the book so I could literally hold it up and go, "Look at me, the prize student," but it didn't arrive in time. Naughty Amazon. But I have brought one of your previous books, which I think we're going to kind of cover that, but we'll come back to that in a minute. I just want to say that on what you've just said there, I do think it's more relevant than ever. For example, Stoicism, Ryan Holiday, I think it's and maybe this is a really great precursor to what we're going to talk around today, that at a time where, I guess the human species is under threat from jobs, from the environment, from geopolitical sense, that actually we do maybe turn back to the more traditional things like the ancient Romans, etc., in terms of those stoical wisdoms, and maybe that's where we've gone full circle.
yeah, I mean, again, it's in the book, and I'm doing various talks and things about it as well. So you've got Socrates, right, who was 5th century BCE, and he talked about the unexamined life is not worth living. And what was a huge, literally sea change in the way that humans thought was before that it was about gods.
Okay.
Gods created the world, gods made thunder, gods made lightning, gods made rain. And then around 6th century, there were various Greek thinkers around Ionia, which is like now Eastern Turkey or Western Turkey. And they started saying, well, maybe it isn't. maybe there are actually natural reasons why thunder and lightning and rain happens, and maybe there are reasons why human beings think and behave in a certain way. And it's nothing to do with, again, the gods or sort of strange things happening in our body. So they asked questions 2,500 years ago, which we're still asking.
Yep.
And that's why I find, and we'll talk about this, that's why I find it so fascinating. And I took some friends of mine around the British Museum the other day, and I took them around some of the Greek and Roman galleries. And again, you look at these people, there are busts of these people who were alive 2,500 years ago, asking the same questions, creating tragedy and comedy, democracy of a form. And
Wonderful.
these are things, whatever you think about what's going on in the world, all of those things are still with us.
Yeah, they are. They're totally relevant, aren't they? So yeah, no, I think it's extremely um, prevalent out there at the moment. And that's what's really intriguing to me when I look at, the next generation, how they will turn to the Stoics, for example, to find that wisdom when there's just, maybe they haven't got people that they can relate to, maybe they haven't got leadership in their lives where they can say, well, we're not sure what's going to happen next. So I think that's really interesting. So I did want to sort of understand, I suppose, from the extensive knowledge that you have from the ancient civilization, but also from your vast array of experience across marketing and communications, because the industry that I represent and most of our audience, let's face it, are people that are working in the recruitment industry who have evolved to become accidental marketeers. That's the fact. They've probably come to this podcast because
Yeah.
they're on LinkedIn, they're on whether it's TikTok, Instagram, wherever they might be, but they're over on a social media channel trying to elevate their personal brand, listening to a podcast as we all do because we want to, increase our learning, open our minds a little bit. And, not many people are trained marketeers. That's the reality. They think, oh, I'll just post something and, 10,000 people will look at it. So I think where I want to get real value from you for our audience on this podcast show is, where we're at in terms of our industry is at that point possibly that you've just described there with Socrates. We are in such a disarray, really. There's mass redundancies. People don't know whether their jobs are safe. Even people that have been in the industry for a really long time think, is there a future for me in this industry? We've got one of the biggest threats in inverted commas, which I think is a huge opportunity, which is the automation and AI capability.
Yeah.
And, people talk around projections. We can listen to the Mo Gawdatts of this world, and we're heading for, this dystopian future in about 5 years, apparently, or less. So I think I just want to almost calm it down and say, right, where we've got all this chaos going on around us, what's our starting point? If I'm a recruiter listening now or a leader managing,
Mm.
what can we do to ensure that we've got, I guess, the right almost building blocks before we even think about how we can promote and sell ourselves to stand out?
Okay, so just start with the easy questions first then.
Sorry. Why are we here, Taz? Why are we here?
Oh yeah, I like it. Okay. What's the meaning of life?
Yeah.
42, as everyone who watched Hitchhiker's Guide knows. Okay, let me give you some sort of starter points on that. And by the way, if anyone's interested, obviously follow me on LinkedIn, and there's a TEDx talk. Because
Yep.
one of the things I think the last time I came on, Leash, we talked about storytelling.
We did.
So let me link up all the things that I've written about and spoken about and trained about. I think I've over the last few years, I've worked out a little diagram which I often draw on a
Yep.
board.
Yeah.
It has three overlapping circles, the Venn diagram. And there's three words, and it's storytelling, emotion, and memory.
Okay.
Now, to go back to what we were just saying, getting really heavy and philosophical, those are the three things that make a human being.
Yeah.
The stories that we tell about ourselves and that other people tell about us,
Mm.
which, by the way, is also my definition of a brand. If anyone's interested in branding, I think a brand is the sum of the stories it tells about itself and that other people tell about it. And again, I've talked a lot previously with you about storytelling, and we can come back to that. And the reason storytelling works is because stories, as I like to say, identify and amplify emotions.
Yeah.
That's what stories do. They take our emotions. So again, for people that don't know me, I used to help run a cinema in North London called the Phoenix, the oldest continuing running cinema in the UK, for about 24 years until the Charity Commission decided that charity trustees should only work for a maximum of six. So
Oh, oh dear.
to retire gracefully. So I'm obsessed with film. But the point is, if you remember, I don't want to talk about COVID because everyone, has unpleasant memories. But if you think about what happened during COVID, we couldn't go to see the theatre show, we couldn't go to see a gig, we
Mm.
couldn't sit in a cinema with 300 people
Yep.
laughing and crying at a rom-com.
Mm.
And the point is, that's what stories do. So stories create emotions for us,
Yep.
but also they're a way of creating empathy. And
Okay.
we were talking before this, weren't we, about empathy?
Mm.
And one of the biggest things that stories do, they make us care.
Okay.
And I think particularly in your field with recruitment, it is a human industry. People talk about being more human, but it is about. So one of the things I'll say is that link between story and emotion is how you create empathy, but it's also how you create identity, how you create personality and character,
Mm.
especially in a competitive market. So whether it's people trying to get a job or one recruitment company trying to be better than another, you're always trying to stand out. That's my one of my main learnings from working in advertising and marketing.
Mm.
It's called
Yep.
saliency. A
Okay.
brand has to jump out. So I'm talking to you on an Apple because I'm an Apple person,
Okay.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Apple stands out for me because they understand that you want to be more creative. You want to think of yourself as being a little bit more
Quirky.
imaginative.
Yep. Definitely.
And my third letter is M is about memories. And again, we can get deep into this because it can be quite sad as well. But human beings are the sum of the memories that we have.
Yep.
Again, if you think about brands that you like, or people that you like, or football teams, actually, I shouldn't, as a Man United fan, talk about
No,
football.
let's not talk about Man United.
Especially for you, especially to say, oh yeah, we're above you at the moment. We're above City at
What?
the
I know
moment.
you are, but
Can
as
we
we
stop?
record this now, you are, but you won't be by the time this goes.
No, I agree. I'll give it about 10 minutes. But my point is that human beings are the sum of the memories. And again, if to get rather sort of deep, when if you suffer sadly from a neurodegenerative disease, your memories start going, and your memories take your stories with them,
Yeah.
and then a lot of those emotions disappear. So for me, I'm always trying to work within those three ideas: stories, emotions, and memory. And when we get on to talking about behavioral economics is where emotions come in because it's the science of understanding how emotions make decisions happen.
As I'm listening to you say all those things, there's one word that's really standing out to me, which is connection.
Mm.
Because all those three things are about how we connect to another person, whether that is, it could be a colleague, it could be a leader, it could be a potential client. I mean, obviously, we can talk from a personal perspective. And, with regards to the social selling that we're all doing on LinkedIn, I think that's the feedback I tend to get on my communication style, that it's about I connect to people. Now, I'm not going to connect to absolutely everybody, but I think for me that storytelling is the most powerful tool that a recruiter actually has. It's that capability to recount and to, ensure that the person and the audience listening is interested. And I love that Venn diagram because I think that what AI can never have is empathy. That's the unique element of being human, isn't it? It can have memory. It's, certainly you know, the,
I hope you're right. It's about
yeah,
20 past 11 here. By about half past, it might gain empathy.
yeah, maybe.
So, but I think you're right. And that is, I mean, I'm not an expert on AI, but there are two things I think which I hope human beings can have over AI. One is we're still better at telling stories.
Yep,
And
definitely.
the second one, which again we can come to, is a massive topic, is humour and irony.
Yep.
Because I think AI still doesn't actually get humour and irony in the same way that,
Mm.
especially British people anyway,
Yep.
do. So that's what I'm holding out that we'll keep AI off as long as we can keep stories and irony and humour to ourselves.
I agree with you. I mean, it doesn't seem to get sarcasm very well, does it? And if ever I've asked it to tell me a joke, my ChatGPT to tell me a joke, or my Alexa or my Siri to tell me a joke, it's never very funny. And it certainly doesn't make me laugh. But I agree with you. And who knows? I mean, that's the one thing that none of us have. We don't really know what trajectory we're on. And I think we all have the power to choose how we utilize it. But I don't want this whole conversation to be around AI. But I think it's important. We have to have it underpinned that that's the world that we're living in.
Yeah.
So yeah, with regards to the behavioral economics element, which a lot of people are going, what on earth, what is that? Let's face it. So
Yeah.
let's keep it layperson's terms. So what exactly is behavioral economics? Can't even say it.
Firstly, as you said, Lish, it's a rubbish brand name. No one ever really thought, well, let's call it that. But it's ended up being labelled as that.
Mm.
And it's really a combination of a number of things. So it's psychology, especially social psychology, how human beings are influenced by other things, not just what's in our brain.
Yeah.
It's also neuroscience. An awful lot's been learned about how the brain works over the last sort of 40, 50 years.
Yeah.
And there's also another bit of it, which is about how evolution, which I hope I can talk about because there are parts of the world I've been to where I'm not allowed to talk about evolution. Evolution actually, we aren't very different to where we were 50,000 years ago. Somebody called us Stone Agers in the fast lane.
Right. Okay.
So we may have AI and laptops, but our brains were still designed 50, 60, 100,000 years ago.
Mm.
So behavioral economics is all about all those things, but it's about crucially about one thing, which is how do we make decisions?
Okay.
That's why I always explain it when I'm doing training. It's simply about that. Yes, it has impact on marketing, communications, and sales and pricing,
Mm.
but it's actually the story and the study of how we make choices.
Okay.
And everyone, I hope, listening, watching this, will be involved in choices in their personal life, obviously, but also in professional life.
Mm.
The decisions and choices you make. And behavioral economics, there's a lovely quote from an impossibly bright and annoyingly handsome neuroscientist called David Eagleman. In
Okay.
one of his books, he says, "We don't think the way we think."
Mm.
And I'm going to pause just for everyone to like applaud because
Okay.
I think that's one of the best things I've ever heard. And there's not a word in that a 4-year-old
No, doesn't
would
understand.
understand.
Yeah.
But his point is, we like to think as human beings that we're rational, we're logical, we're decisive, we're independent. And spoiler alert,
Yeah.
all of behavioral economics, which includes people like Daniel Kahneman, Amos Tversky, Richard Thaler, they've done loads of research. They put people in scanners and all sorts of
Wow.
experiments. So it's not just theoretical; it's real
Real
science.
evidence.
They've shown that isn't true, and most people know that in their lives. They know that we're not this logical, rational Mr. Spock computer thing. But often in business, I find we try and have that illusion,
Yeah.
either as companies or as people in sales or marketing, that we are, but also the people we're talking to, are perfectly logical and rational. And my point is, why, if it's an illusion, why use that? It's not true. It's just not true.
You
Or if
saying
it's
are we illogical, irrational, or are you saying we're more around the emotional side of behaviour than
all of those things, we
right?
we like to think, as I say, that most of the time, if not all the time, that's what economists.
Mm.
That's why it still has that word economics in there, because
Okay.
classical economics, which is often called Homo economicus, the idea that human beings behave in the way that economists would like them to. And
Yeah.
that's one of the reasons why we had the crash in 2008,
Mm-hmm.
because everyone thought, right, people won't behave. Well, they do. They behaved irrationally.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there are lots of biases. There are lots of things which our brain does, which either bugs or features. You can argue about it, but that's just the way our brains have been designed.
Mm.
Which mean that yes, it's the most brilliant computer in the universe, the brain, but also it makes mistakes,
Yeah.
and it leads us to do things which often we don't even realise we're
We're doing.
doing. So all of those things, which I find fascinating, because the title of the course that I run is called "The Weird and Wonderful World." And I say to people when they come on, I'm going to mess with your brains, right? I'm going to get inside your head and mess with your brain, right? Like Darren Brown. Because that's what behavioral economics shows us, that we're not, as I say. And I think one of the things that I always say is, surely it's better when you're doing any marketing or communication to work with the brain and not against it.
And the brain. So if our natural default is to be emotional, that and you're saying that comes from the evolutionary perspective of tens of
Yeah.
thousands of years.
Yeah.
I don't want to make any assumptions. So is this to do with us keeping safe, feeling psychologically safe, and not putting ourselves in any kind of risk mode?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying that we are nothing but emotions. That's not true. We have both.
Yeah.
And again, anyone who knows even the tiniest bit of behavioral economics, and again, please do read Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman.
Okay.
Um, Fantastic guy. He died only about a year or two ago. He was in his 90s. I actually met him in London. He was a lovely,
Wow,
lovely man.
amazing.
Apart from
Great
everything else.
recommendation.
And he popularized this idea that the brain has two processes,
Mm.
and they were named System 1 and System 2 just to keep it easy.
Okay.
So, System 2 is your rational brain, which is like hopefully listening to me and thinking about what I'm saying now consciously.
Yes.
But we all have System 1, which is the unconscious.
Yep.
And Freud was half right. We have an unconscious and it's
Mm.
very powerful. It's just not full of Greek myths about sleeping with your mother.
Good.
But the point is, and again, this is Kahneman's expression, he says System 1 is the secret author of our choices.
Right. Okay.
Lovely expression. In other words, secret. Often we don't know why we do what we do because our unconscious makes these decisions.
Yep.
And I'll give you 1 minute of brain of neuroscience. The reason is very simple, right? Your brain accounts for something like 2 or 3% of your body weight.
Oh, right. Okay.
Only about a kilogram and a bit
Yeah.
of what they call wet wear.
Okay.
But it needs between 20 and 25% of all the energy that your
Yeah.
body consumes.
Mm.
It's the most energy hungry part of your body.
Mm.
So it's in the brain's interest to do things which save energy.
Yep.
So the word
Okay.
that we use all the time in behavioral economics is effortlessness.
Mm.
So whether you're you're doing your website, writing your copy, doing your CV, you have to do things which are effortless for other people's brains.
Right.
We know that. We can see Amazon one click. We know that.
Yeah.
It's not. But the fact is, so many companies I work with seem to create communications or websites or material which works in spite of that.
Right.
If you think about the energy as of the brain as saving energy and wanting to be as effortless as possible, suddenly you've got something you can put into practice. That's my hope anyway from behavioral economics.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting, and we certainly won't have time in this episode today, but it's making me think around things like decision-making processes where you have very complicated, psychometric tests, you have role plays, you have business plans, and you put somebody through a whole process, and then it'll be, well, they just weren't the right fit, or they said this, and you can't do anything about that. And I'm a big believer that as recruiters, we prepare people for interviews, but we don't tell them to change or say these things. They just have to be themselves. So I just think that's unlocking a whole Pandora's box, isn't it? So that recommendation I've read, and I know I've talked about this particular book in the past because for me it was a game-changing book. Was The Chimp Paradox, Dr. Steve
Yeah.
Peters.
CPs, yeah,
Someone
which is based on all of that. It's
same
based on all of that. Yeah,
same thing. So it's around, but I just find it really interesting because it's almost like we have this cadence in recruitment, this fast pace. We're adapting. We're in this ever changing, chaotic world, and we all think we're elevating ourselves doing this, but actually, from what you're saying, it's almost like we're almost battling against the real thought process that our brains want to go through, which does it come down to likability? Is it where we like somebody or we feel that we feel physically safe, we're going to be nurtured?
yeah.
It's just such
There's
a
there's a couple of things. Like one is, I haven't mentioned
right.
Maslow's hierarchy. So you're right. The bottom is safety, just physical, psychological safety, all the way up to actualization.
Yeah.
And we can talk about that. Again, when I do my behavioral economics training, I will ask people as homework
Mm.
to watch Inside Out,
Oh yeah.
Pixar film, or Inside Out 2 about the teenager.
Yeah.
And what we know is that, again, it's a long sort of story, but there are considered to be six, I think Inside Out have five,
Mm.
six universal human emotions,
Okay.
which you can tell by facial expressions.
Yeah.
And the six are happiness, sadness, fear, anger, surprise, disgust,
Okay.
since you ask. And one of the things I will say to people, whether I'm doing training or getting to think about their brands, is just take a step away from thinking about what your company does or makes or what your website looks like. Just ask yourself, what emotions are you trying to create in your audience, in your
Oh,
stakeholders?
what a great question.
And I find, and even I think it's the same with recruitment.
Yeah.
Every company I work with, so the last few years, I don't know, Kantar, Panasonic, the BBC, the NHS, Destination New South Wales, whatever.
Mm.
Everyone has the same problem, right? Which is how do we stand out?
Yep.
How do we stand out from our competition? So one of the things I'll say is rather than just thinking about your message, your proposition, as a brand, which I spent, decades working on. Too often that ends up becoming like a lowest common denominator benefit. We do this, we make this, we are, we make great microwaves or air fryers, or we're a great presenter of television, or whatever it might be. And often you end up just saying the same thing as everyone else is.
Yeah.
So if you can look at it from an emotional point of view and also the storytelling, my argument is always that's the way that you're going to create more saliency, differentiation for your company.
Yep.
But equally, and I mentioned this, I think, last time we spoke, if you're actually a candidate, that's exactly what also you need to do for yourself to stand out. Is what emotions do I, and you talked about connections. How do I create empathy? What emotions am I going to try and evoke when I'm, talking to prospective employers? So all those things for me, they're all playing in the same sort of space.
Yeah, just to pick up on that, actually, one of the key things that when I'm consulting my clients who are ultimately they're the purveyor of people because they're the ones
Yeah.
that are employing people, but then they're by virtue they're then placing people. So I always say, how does your customer, whether that's your client or your candidate, how do you make them feel? And that to me, is that the next level of emotion, I suppose? It's how do you make somebody feel when they're engaging with you? Whether that's, an initial reach out or message on LinkedIn, whether that's an interview, whether that's a promotion conversation, whether it's a leavers conversation, someone's leaving you. How have you made that person feel? Because to me, that goes back to your trio, the storytelling element of how do they recount that? That's where reputation comes from. That's where, standing the test of time. The empathy element, did you really understand what you were doing? Did you give a shit? I mean, the reality is a lot of people don't. And the memory element, people do remember how you've made them feel. And it's very hard to overcome that, isn't it? If you're saying, I mean, we're emotional beings, almost you can't forgive that if someone's mistreated you. So I think it's so all encompassing, this conversation, Taz.
There's a great quote which some people say was attributed to Maya Angelou, but that's another debate. But it says people will forget what you said,
Mm,
people will forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel.
mm,
And I use that in my training all the time. So, because obviously I do a lot of stuff about presentations, and I
mm.
say to people, stop just presenting loads of charts with numbers.
Yeah,
People will forget those charts.
don't know.
They'll also probably forget what happened, when you're presenting it, but they won't forget how it felt. Did it feel like it was a really exciting presentation? Was it fun, or was it incredibly tedious and a waste of half an hour of their life? So I'll
Mm.
say to people all the time, that's what I think I like using the word metric,
But it's true.
but yeah, that's what you're trying to achieve. How do I make them feel? I mean, the other thing I'll say is, again, it's like going on a date. If you're meeting someone for the first time, you don't swap spreadsheets.
I don't know. It sounds
Well,
interesting.
I hope, maybe people do. Maybe accountants do. Do accountants go on dates? I don't know. Probably they don't qualify. I don't know. Sorry to any accountants listening. But again, that's the point. That's what human beings do. We connect, we tell stories about each other. And you can have a list of, you do, this is what I've done, this is who I, but
Yeah.
actually it's little stories and moments that connect. So if you watch Channel 4 First Dates, which I do, I'm also great, sorry, at small details. I love the thing about small details. And there's again something from the Guardian First Dates, which I often use. They always get asked, "Did you kiss?"
Yeah.
And one of my favourite responses was a guy said, "She told me that she'd only read one Harry Potter book, which weirded me out a bit, so no."
Oh, that's hilarious.
I'm thinking, really, is that a reason for not?
Reason? Which one though? Which book?
Apparently it is. And again, often that's where we go wrong. Because
Mm,
behavioral economics, another thing for me, says stop trying to make one size fits all rational, factual thing.
yeah,
Little human details, human moments, that's what creates those connections and empathy.
it does. I've got a challenge. I've got a challenge for our audience. I
Mm.
want you to, whether it's on phone calls, on an email, on a message, or on your LinkedIn, I want to see some posts out there. asking about how you've made people feel in your community. What's interesting is that we're celebrating our 20-year anniversary in October. In fact, when this goes out, we've possibly just celebrated it. And one of the tasks that I set to Lilia was to go and ask our key recruitment community that have partnered with us over the years. That is the key question. How have we made you feel? How does key recruitment make you feel? And we have been sharing some little videos and some stories of what people's experience has been, because that is what I remember. I don't necessarily remember the data, although I love data. I don't necessarily remember what someone's told me to build, but I remember how they've made me feel, that they've made me feel reassured that they are competent to do X, Y, and Z. And I think it's a really nice, I mean, we could talk about this for the next 3 hours, as you know, but sadly we are reaching the end of our time today. Your new book is more
Yeah,
on the classical marketing techniques. So just give us
yeah.
a little blurb on what
Little
people
plug.
find.
It's called the Classical Marketing Book, and it's got a picture of Roman columns on it. And
Yeah.
the reason is, as I think I said at the beginning, I just wanted to use stuff that I've always been sort of obsessed with and passionate about. And there are three, obviously always three, because in storytelling we talk about magic number three. So Veni, Vidi, Vici, Liberté, Egalité, Fraternité, three wise men, three blind mice. Number of times you're a lady. There are three sections: MVP,
Okay.
which is either minimum viable product or most valuable player, depending on who you talk to. So M is mythology. So it's about looking at the myths and stories, because there are fantastic ways. And I've even suggested you might have a segmentation, which is something I used to do a lot of. How do you segment your audiences? But think of them like by Greek characters. So
Okay.
Achilles was very heroic, Odysseus was very cunning, Dionysus was all about pleasure and hedonism.
Okay.
That's M. V is vocabulary, lots of great words, which stop using jargon, use more interesting vocabulary. And P is about persuasion, which is what we've been talking about. And again, there are loads of great stories, ideas, tips from people like Aristotle and Cicero about how to persuade people.
Mm.
And again, as we said at the beginning, those ideas are 2,500 years old, but the need to persuade people has not gone away. And what they said 2,500 years ago is still relevant now.
It's even more relevant in
Even more relevant.
crowded marketplace. I love that, and I'm so gutted that it wasn't here so I could hold it up. If you do, and you are an avid reader, because I know we get a lot of people through the community that tend to also be, big readers, etc., have voracious appetites. Let me know if there are any of Taz's books that you've already read. I think this is my fourth one. I need to catch up, don't I? I'm not being a star pupil at all. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. You're allowed not to have read them all.
No, I have read it, but I'm gutted that that one didn't arrive in time. As always, we could talk for hours, obviously, but you're my cousin, but just from a relevance to our audience, I think there's a lot of things that people can take away from this. And what's brilliant is that you've created a real resource pool as well in terms of what they can do to further develop. So I can't thank you enough. And I really appreciate you always giving your time to the audience. So thank you so much, Taz. I really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. It always feels like we're just chatting, which is nice because I do a lot of these, and sometimes I feel I'm being like given a list of preset questions.
Oh no.
When it's just conversation and it flows, I think it just is a better experience all round. So
This is now, even though it's season 6, it's officially my second season of no pre-agreed questions. Personally, I prefer it. I think people get the real me. I don't go into any meeting with a client with pre-agreed questions. So why would I do it on a podcast? I just think it's about me listening and hopefully asking what you guys want to know. So thank you so much. And yeah, I'll hopefully see you soon, but we'll talk about that off camera.
lovely. Thanks. And thank you everyone for listening, watching, etc.
Oh, thank you, Taz.